West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est long, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
I want to take a moment to talk about a column that was printed in the Wall Street Journal over the weekend that garnered a lot of attention.
God. Holy cow.
And it got all this attention for all the wrong reasons. Maybe they were looking for clickbait. I don't know. It was very lowbrow. The Journal's editorial page published an op-ed by columnist Joseph Epstein that begins this way, quote, Madam First Lady, Mrs. Biden, Jill, Kiddo. A bit of advice on what may seem like a small, but I think is a not unimportant matter. Any chance you might drop the doctor before your name? Dr. Jill Biden? Sounds and feels fraudulent, not to say a touch comic. And the column is pretty much downhill from there. If you can imagine, he was dead serious when he wrote that. The piece hit quite a dubious trifecta. An attack on Jill Biden's doctorate that managed to be petty, elitist, and misogynistic all at once.
Triple crown winner there.
And to a highly accomplished 69-year-old woman was to tell the kiddo who received 2 masters as well as a doctorate that she shouldn't use the term doctor unless she delivered a baby. Questioning what planet we're on at this point as I'm reading it. We don't even have to ask if this would have been written about a man.
Well, it never is.
My God.
Actually.
I mean, it's... Thank you. Yeah,
it
would have never been written by him.
You actually have somebody that you've loved in your life who, I don't know, people have called the doctor for decades. Nobody ever called Dr. Brzezinski a kiddo.
You see, Epstein's standard, which the Wall Street Journal gave voice to, defies the Journal's own standards. The paper's opinion page described Henry Kissinger as such in 2014. Quote, Dr. Kissinger served as National Security Advisor.
Did he deliver babies?
He must be so
Dr. Kissinger's an OB? Really?
Yeah.
I never knew that side of Dr. Kissinger.
Earlier this year, the Wall Street Journal quoted a conversation the president-elect had with my father when Biden was in the Senate. Quote, Doctor, we should have you here more often. I appreciate you taking the time. We have 2 distinguished panelists to follow. We're going to recess to go for vote again. Dr. Brzezinski. It's always a pleasure to have you here. I always learn something when you're here. Dr. Brzezinski. No one there seemed to have a problem with that.
Isn't it? Wait, hold on. So Dr. Brzezinski, they got no problem with that. Dr. Kissinger, they got no problem with that.
No.
But Dr. Biden, let's see how are they different? Hold on, you keep going. I'm going to think about this.
She cares about community college students getting to where they want to go in life.
She's a woman, actually. Okay.
Okay.
Kiddo.
So Like the Wall Street Journal and the president-elect, the New York Times has always been comfortable using the honorific doctor in news stories, like the one reporting on William F. Buckley's funeral. Quote, Dr. Kissinger's gravelly voice choked with emotion several times. And the Washington Post obit piece upon my father's passing did as well. Dr. Brzezinski was a captivating lecturer at Harvard and then at Columbia. He was a teacher, too.
Tell me, did your father deliver you?
Nope.
Did he ever deliver any babies?
He did not deliver a baby.
Wow.
And I'm fairly certain that Kissinger didn't deliver a baby either.
Probably.
Now, this writer Epstein may not take issue with my father and Henry Kissinger being called doctor because, well, they earned their degrees back in the good old days. The columnist dismisses Dr. Biden's academic feat because she only acquired hers 15 years ago, long after the days when, as he describes in this piece, a secretary sat outside the room where these examinations were administered. The
women were on the outside.
A pitcher of water and a glass on her desk. The water and glass were there for the candidates who fainted. And, of course, note the gender he assigns to the secretary. So let's just be clear about the true worth of Dr. Biden's title, one she earned at the age of 55 when she returned to school to get her doctoral degree, because she never gave up on her career and her dreams, no matter what, even after raising children and continuing to support her husband's career as well. Dr. Biden is an educator who chose to teach even during the 8 years that she served as Second Lady of the United States. In fact, she continued teaching when her husband was running for the Senate, for the vice presidency, and for the presidency. She would fly to Iowa and fly back and make it to class. I know Jill Biden well. She's always wanted her staff members to call her Jill. They call her Dr. Biden out of respect for a highly accomplished woman who deserves much more than the condescending column that the Wall Street Journal stooped to publish this weekend. This is a woman who knows her value, and with her in the White House, she will help so many others do the same. For more on Dr. Jill Biden, go to knowyourvalue.com. And as for the Wall Street Journal, you owe the future First Lady an apology.
It is Monday, the 14th of December of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. Oh my, another one of those weekends, like all the other weekends for the last 4 years. Oh, I am so waiting for these quiet weekends to come again. Oh, wouldn't that be nice? Boy, you almost forget that we used to have those. And we did. I can attest to it. Hey, so I was on the Tim Koramal show, taped yesterday and released today. And my Twitter friend of the week, we do that there, of course, is Dr. Jill Biden, and that is why I had a little clip about Dr. Jill at the top there with Mika extolling the virtues of academic achievement. Yeah. And this guy Joseph Epstein today is like double down. He says people totally missed his point. He's upset because he thinks that they're criticizing him for, I don't know, being a Trumper. You called me a Trumper. I think they called him a misogynist. Now, if you align misogyny with Trump, that's on you, buddy. Oh, well. I did read some Facebook posts from various women who took the guy's classes that he taught over the years. Now, he was bragging that he was able to teach college-level courses with only a BA. Well, good for you. It sounds like you're a man. Anyway, he was not a nice person, and one of those types that we all had. So whenever we hear the Turning Point USA brown shirt Trumpenjungen like Charlie Kirk whine about the liberal professors in academia, yeah, well, you know what? The memorable ones were the dicks like Joseph Epstein, okay? and they let their politics be known to everyone. And they were bullies about it. Absolutely. So, I just never bought into the Charlie Kirk assessment of academe because I really don't think he excelled. And that's why he was so against it. Indeed. Well, looks like we have a vaccine being distributed. Now, the first shot, ostensibly, went to a black healthcare worker, and it was given to her by a black healthcare worker in New York, and that's the way it should be. I like those optics, except it looks like White House. Now, they say White House staff. Now, if we're talking butlers and the cooks and, the cleaning crew and all that, yeah, get them the vaccine right now. But I think they mean staff like Stephen Santa Monica Goebbels Miller. And his wife. They both have had it, but they're going to get it. And probably already have. And I'm a CNN reporter, probably Costa, just dragged them for getting the vaccine first. So, yeah, I like the optics in New York with the black woman healthcare worker on the front lines getting a shot of the vaccine from a frontline black healthcare worker woman. I love those optics. But the fact remains is that the people in the White House got it first. After they spread it around everywhere Trump went for his, super spreader Nuremberg rallies. Okay, I guess, now we're hearing, the general population will start getting it like maybe February or March. Thanks. You mean like last year when you knew about the virus before Thanksgiving? They always say, oh, yeah, it was like in December. No, it wasn't Thanksgiving. Before Thanksgiving. That's when I first started reading about this thing happening over there in Europe and China. Because ski resorts were seeing a spike in their workers who tended to come from all sorts of different countries in the Alps. And they were seeing spike of this disease, and it looked like maybe a novel coronavirus. Like some weird cold, a super cold. And so we didn't hear about it, and they weaponized it for propaganda purposes, being the Trump administration, and used it for their own devious means. Very cynical. And we have a story today in the international section of the show, as it's been turning out at the chef's table when we do the amuse-bouche. We have a story about Russia hacking into some very important departments of the American government. I mean, it's one thing when they hack into our electrical grid and our water systems and, all of that. Even, it's even another when they hack into little county governments and, give them ransomware and say, pay us money. and hospitals and counties do. But it's another when they start hacking into our actual, cybersecurity structure here in the United States. And kind of makes you wonder what Trump's been talking to Vlad about that we here in America don't know anything about. What did he say? Why did he look so sullen that one time in Helsinki, like he had seen a ghost? And why, to this day, I still want to know why Anthony Kennedy was so pissed off. And Trump was all there on camera. They're walking, and all of a sudden they stop before they go through the door, and Kennedy starts pointing at Trump, and he looks quite angry, and then Trump, shuttles him right into the door where they have their, disagreement. Or was it an offer that Anthony couldn't refuse? I still want to know what Anthony was so pissed off about. I'd like to know that. So, yeah, it's all coming to a T. It's all coming to a head. It's all starting to blow up in our faces because the toxicity is just getting so potent as we get down to, what now, 36 days? Almost a month before this guy is out of there. Electoral College meets today, And looks like state houses across America have to take extra security measures. You know, that's not normal, I have to say. Electoral college, state houses having to take extra security measures because of credible threats of violence, because the electoral college is going to meet, and, you know, because, 80 plus million people voted for Joe. Keep hearing about, Trump saying I made records, and no other president has ever gotten these many votes. Well, you know what? The guy running against you got more. That's how it works. Majority rules, mofo. Well, spoiled rich boys don't believe that. They want their way. The rules don't apply to them, never have, never will, and this guy's been living with that kind of cosmology his whole life, and look where we are now. Okay, I blame the parents. You know, we wouldn't have this narcissism and greed if it wasn't for the parents. Maybe something ought to be done about that from now on. Spoiled rich kids? Maybe we should start fining the parents an amount that will hurt, by the way. Not just some little, this is just the cost of doing business, and, you know, I'm rich and this is what I do. Yeah. Sort of like before the total lockdown in New York and in LA, some restaurants were just going ahead and paying the $1,000 or whatever it was a day as a cost of doing business during the pandemic. And they were still getting spikes of coronavirus coming specifically from the restaurants that were paying the fee to stay open, or the fine to stay open. Now it's all shut down, and anybody else to be healthy, especially if it's a government health worker. They're now the enemy of the state to about 70 million people who've been brainwashed. On the Tim Corrimal show, I related a story with my mom over the weekend that was a bit disturbing. I have made mention before here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy how the Sinclair Broadcasting Company, you can see it here in small town America, what has happened with Sinclair. Of course, they bought up all of the right-wing church radio stations all across America. And when the FCC ruled that media companies can own more than what they were allowed before, and that they could go through cross media, like a newspaper publisher could own, TV and radio stations, whereas before they could not. Sinclair, let's be clear, they weaponized the ability to go cross media, and they had all of these right-wing church radio stations already, and then they started buying up TV stations to the point that every single major network TV show here, local affiliate, is owned by Sinclair. So when the news comes on, and it's really more endemic when the local news is on, and I will say that there's some important local news that is conveyed on these channels, but then all of a sudden you'll get an infomercial propaganda piece that looks like the regular news. So they had one of these infomercial propaganda pieces about Hunter Biden and his taxes and money made in China and yada, 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 like it was fact. And I had to remind my mom, you got to be careful about, these local channels. They're all Sinclair. Well, Mom's getting, a little agitated in old age. Part of it is because of, the onset of, Alzheimer's and whatnot. And diminished capacity, we'll put it that way. But anyway, she got a little bit upset. Now, I will say that good for her, she did turn the station, albeit grudgingly, to find something, a little bit less agitating or less cause of agitation in our little abode. I didn't tell her not to watch it. I just said, you got to take care. I mean, make sure you're aware of when these propaganda infomercials are coming up, because I had to fill her in. She wasn't really aware of what Sinclair is, what they do. And this is how the brainwashing works. This is how the hearts and minds of the American public, 70 million of them, have been able to be turned into a zombie cult. So, we need to take care. Well, I just wanted to clear that up a bit, is that, the agitation with Mom had more to do with her getting old and the diminished capacity of around that, rather than she holds some sort of Trumpian brainwashing. She might take an approach a bit different than what I would prefer, because I don't think feelings are enough in this world. You really got to know why. But, my mom is a good-hearted person. And she stated as such. In her heart, she knows that we are all equal. That black and white and Asian and brown and what have you, disabled, gay, we're all equally protected, and due process is afforded to all of us. That's what she feels deep in her heart. That's good. But we ought to know why. We ought to know how it was that we got to this point. We ought to know who were the authors Hannah Arendt read. I had invoked Hannah Arendt and the banality of evil, and Mom's getting a little up there, and so I had to remind her who Hannah Arendt was, and her import, and the amount of scholarship. Now, I will say my mom comes from a culture of really anti-intellectuals, surprisingly. Even though on my mom's side of the family, there's like professors and lawyers and politicians and, high-achieving academic types. But there's a strong element throughout the family, the extended family, of being, anti-intellectuals, probably the know-nothings, which can be a bother because, that's how you get your racists and your fascists. You got to be careful about it. So Mom always has like this knee-jerk American anti-intellectual attitude about, we don't want the experts telling us. All of us have the ability to know things because we feel it to be right. I'm sorry. Feeling is not enough. Okay? Just not enough. I always got into an argument with evangelicals about the difference between good thoughts and good works. It's not enough to just have faith and belief. You actually have to go out there and do the good works. Now, I will hand it to them. What mobilized them in terms of getting this idea of, thoughts and works balanced is to go out there and just screw everything up and be the biggest bigot you can be. That's putting thoughts into action. Well, that's not quite what I said. I said good thoughts and good actions. Bigotry, racism, misogyny, power, greed, the prosperity gospel, those are not good thoughts, okay? And any action derived out of that, by definition, is not good either. Good thoughts, good actions. What this terrible Sinclair propaganda has done, though, is what is the old Soviet strategy morphed into this organized mob government that Vlad runs. And what is that? That is to put the question of what truth is. That truth is fungible. That every side has as much weight to argue their side as everybody else. So what is the truth? What are the facts? Sinclair puts out all of this propaganda purporting to be facts, but they're absolute lies. So then when those lies are refuted, there's more lies on top of that. So then the viewer, like my mom, looks at that and says, well, you just have your bias and they have their bias, and I want to hear all the biases so I can make up my own mind. So the problem is that in the midst of that, then we get this weird both sidesisms that we shouldn't be having in the Democratic Party, because we know there's only one side obstructing. And yet we have adopted it. And why? Because we've been brainwashed into the rhetoric. It sounds right, but it's not. It's not both sides. There's only one side. There's one guy who's been packing the courts, and it isn't Joe Biden. I want to see what's going to happen when Joe nominates a judge of any stature, like a justice of the peace in Texas. I know they don't do that, but I'm just saying. Mitch McConnell's going to block it. So, the resistance continues, doesn't it? They're going to have a shadow government. Well, if you're going to have a shadow government, at least get the hell out of this country and have it somewhere else. Like, I don't know, Moscow has granted asylum to your crew. Go there. All right? Issue your proclamations like some sort of, I don't know, Nazi de Gaulle. See how that works for you. All right. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Oh, my, look at the time. Well, it's Monday. Well, I did mention that Mika did break it down about Dr. Jill Biden. Never gave up on her career or her dreams. And she's a doctor. I'm not even going to get into that argument because there is no argument. There isn't. And all I can say is look at Dr. Sebastian Gorka, and he demands you call him doctor. And that PhD is very questionable, unlike the normal PhDs that are granted. All right, on the rest of the menu, starting off here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. El Paso elected its liberal former mayor, defeating the conservative incumbent in a runoff. Sort of a shock, but hey, it's good. California wants to join the federal antitrust case against Google on the day that Google got hacked. Yeah, Google Docs. Better start downloading all your Google Docs. They might, I don't know. Let's hope they're not corrupted. And the neo-Nazi Daily Stormer website founder is accused of ignoring a $14 million judgment levied against him by a Montana district judge. Yeah, this guy says he's out of the country, but people aren't really sure. He might just be in the woods outside of his little Montana town. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where the International Criminal Court's prosecutor is ready to open an investigation into war crimes by Russia in the Ukraine. Oh, really? And it was just revealed that Russia has been hacking into the US Treasury, Commerce, and other departments since March, which makes Trump's firings in cybersecurity so suspicious. All that and more. On West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is our chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln because you need monitors. All right, what do you think this is? Anyway, thank you, Kelly, for monitoring the chat room and so much more. Of course. Hey, if you would then take a look to the leftish of the page, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will then hopefully notice our link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, as some have for almost 10 years now, if you could send us the equivalent of, say, how about an espresso-type coffee drink? Fancy that. And it is quite fancy in some ways, but if you could send that amount to us once a month, we're able to stretch those dollars really beyond compare. On the quantum level even, that's how it works, because they're neither particles nor waves, but packets of energy. That's the new results now in the quantum world. Anyway, we stretch those packets of energy and pay our bills. and that allows us to, fly under the radar, continue resisting, because it looks like there's going to be some really heady neo-Nazi efforts here in the coming years. I hope we can root it out faster than that. Anyway, your generosity allows us to pay our bills, fly under the radar, continue resisting, and fulfilling our civic duty as the founders originally intended. And I also want to give a big shout out of thanks to those of you who have upped your recurring fees. What is it that you give us? You give us money to pay our bills, and there are a few of you who have upped that monthly contribution, and that touches the heart. And that's with a capital H. Thank you so much. I'm not kidding. That is so generous, and especially now. So thank you very, very, very much. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, you could do so by just simply going to @NetrootsRadio. Tom takes care of that because he made it simple, and that's the way we like it. Thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter @JusticePutnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime. Get that linked up on Twitter and Facebook again until Zuckerberg tells me I can't, because I'm expecting it. I always do. And then it gets out there on all sorts of other social media platforms too, and they're all out there. If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, go to @CookbookWest and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., 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 etc. Okay. Got through that. You know, sometimes these Monday morning rants go really long, but that's okay. We're a salon and we can do whatever we want. And what we want to do right now is get into this first offering because we're just running out of time. And it's from the Associated Press by the ever-present Anonymous Worker Bees. El Paso residents have elected a new mayor, handing a defeat to incumbent Mayor D. Margo in favor of his predecessor, Oscar Leeser, in a runoff race defined by the city's coronavirus crisis. Leeser, who was mayor of the West Texas city on the Mexican border from 2013 through 2017, won with an overwhelming 82% of the vote. And that was the county's unofficial tally. He finished first among 6 mayoral candidates in November, but with less than 50%, forcing Saturday's runoff. They voted on Saturday. So interesting. 2017, the beginning of the Trump era, and people wanted Trump types. I will just let you know that in the El Paso mayoral race, they don't run by party. It's all an independent, just no one names their party. But this guy D. Margo, is a diehard Trumper. And Oscar Leeser is a Democratic mayor, former mayor. Now he's the current mayor, and it will be in a bit here. Leeser pledged on Saturday night to bring the city together, and that has been battered in recent years by overcrowded migrants at the border, a mass shooting at a Walmart, and the economic and health crisis brought on by the coronavirus. Mayoral races in El Paso are nonpartisan, as I mentioned, but Margo, a businessman and former state legislator, identifies as a Republican. Really? I like that. I like how AP sometimes splits the baby in this. And Leeser, president of a Hyundai dealership, is a Democrat. Margo said in a concession speech Saturday that he believes no mayor has had to deal with the array of calamity he's faced in the last 2 years. Well, they're always whining now, aren't they? Leeser will be sworn in early July, as city officials told the New York Times, although a date has not been set for the ceremony. Monday, so the anonymous staff at the Associated Press bring us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. California is seeking to join the Justice Department in its antitrust lawsuit against Google parent Alphabet Inc., one of the state's largest businesses. State Attorney General Xavier Becerra filed the motion to join the case in federal court on Friday. Google's anti-competitive behavior has unlawfully maintained the company's monopoly of internet search and search-based advertising at the expense of consumers, said Becerra. The Justice Department sued Google in October. The case filed in federal court in Washington, D.C. alleges that Google uses billions of dollars collected from advertisers to pay phone manufacturers to ensure Google is the default search engine on browsers. This, the lawsuit claims, harms consumers and stifles smaller rivals. Michael Kunzelman of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A Montana real estate agent who secured a $14 million judgment against a neo-Nazi website publisher for orchestrating an anti-Semitic harassment campaign against her Jewish family is seeking a court order compelling the man to disclose information about his assets and finances. Tanya Gersh's attorneys said in a court filing on Friday that Andrew Anglin, founder and operator of the Daily Stormer, has not paid any portion of the August 2019 judgment and has ignored their requests for information about his whereabouts, his operation of the website, and other assets. Anglin, a native of Ohio, has claimed to be living outside the U.S., but his current whereabouts are unknown. U.S. District Judge Dana Christensen said in Missoula, Montana, ordered Anglin to pay over $4 million in compensatory damages and $10 million in punitive damages to Gersh, who is represented by lawyers from the Alabama-based Southern Poverty Law Center. The court entered the default judgment against Anglin after he failed to appear for his scheduled deposition by Gersh's attorneys. Her lawyers also asked the court to sanction Anglin for his continued lack of cooperation. They are seeking details about recent financial transactions, donations, and debts, as well as documents related to his bank accounts, cryptocurrency holding, and domain name holdings. Anglin is not represented by an attorney in the case. He did not immediately respond to an email seeking comment because he is hiding out now, isn't he? Yes, he is, a little neo-Nazi. All right, let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, The Life Ahead. That's the title of the new film helmed by the legendary Sophia Loren and directed by her son Eduardo Ponte, about two outsiders coming together. In the wrong hands, trite sentimentality would await, but Loren and Ponte managed to take this theme and make a film that is intelligent, touching, and timely. Loren's Madame Rosa, a Holocaust survivor turned sex worker turned foster mother, is a complex character who maintains a sense of dignity, even when it comes to dealing with unruly charges and the pitfalls of old age. Supporting her is the young Ibrahima Guy, playing Momo, a Senegalese refugee who first meets Rosa after he attempts to steal from her. A local doctor who has been caring for Momo bribes Rosa to add him to her brood. Rosa, along with the kids and a trans woman who lives in the apartment below, form a family of sorts, reinforcing one of the movie's themes. That family can be more about the people with whom you choose to associate than about biological relations. As the audience learns more about Momo and Rosa, one thing becomes clear. Trauma has deep and lasting impacts on people and who they can trust. The fact that these two can trust anyone, much less each other, is a triumph, even though Ponte is wise enough not to wrap his story with a fairy tale ending. The performances of 86-year-old Loren and 14-year-old Guy and the rapport they generate make this one worth a watch. It's rare to see a woman Loren's age in a leading role, but this one makes clear that there was far more than beauty that made her the first woman to win the Best Actress Oscar in a non-English role. A nomination for The Life Ahead wouldn't be a stretch. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Suzanne Bard. What do you call a bat that only eats fruit but isn't classified as one of the fruit bats? One species that fits that description is thought to live in forests from southern Mexico to the north end of South America, but they're so rarely seen that very little is known about them, apart from their unique appearance, which is why the species is called the wrinkle-faced bat.
Many people say that these bats are really ugly, but the word ugly is for bat biologists a forbidden word. So I think we all agree that they are pretty special looking bats.
University of Ulm researcher Marco Czapka, his colleague Gloria Gessinger, agrees.
Most bats look like cute little puppies, but they have a very wrinkly face, and it's just a lot of wrinkles everywhere.
But something else about the males, maybe an even more unusual facial feature.
It's very easy to distinguish between male and female because the males have this funny face mask.
Using their little bat thumbs, males can pull up a furry flap of skin to cover their faces like a mask.
The bat almost tries to hide its entire face inside of the mask. And people have suspected for a long time that these masks have something to do with mating.
But the bat's courtship is difficult to study because they're so hard to find. That is, until 2018, when Czapka and Gessinger's colleague, University of Costa Rica biologist Bernal Rodriguez Herrera, received a tip that a group of males had been spotted in a highland forest. His team rushed there to record their behaviors using infrared video cameras and specialized microphones.
The objective was that we get as much information as possible about these animals, and the bats stayed there for something like 6 weeks.
The animals formed what's called a lek, where a group of males hangs out in a small area, displaying extravagantly to females, an uncommon reproductive strategy in bats. The males start their display by rubbing their fingers together for hours,
which looks really weird.
Eventually, they begin to sing, even with their faces covered.
And they do these trills and echolocation calls when they're perches. The trills sound something like this. And then the echolocation calls in between, and then trills again.
The ultrasound recordings have been slowed down to be in the range of human hearing.
Sometimes they put the mask down and up again, and then they continue singing.
But if another bat approaches, they start making noise with their wings.
Followed by this super loud whistle sequence.
After a sequence of sounds, the researchers documented one mating between a male and a female. They think the raised mask and sounds, along with odor cues, may play an important role in the wrinkle-faced bat's courtship. The study is in the journal PLOS One. Many questions remain, so researchers returned to the site a year later in hopes of learning more about the elusive bat's courtship behaviors, but the bats were nowhere to be found.
So you really need to have a lot of luck to learn more about this.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Suzanne Bard.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
From kitchen tables worldwide, you can hear a chorus of parents chastising their children with the same refrain. Stop playing with your food. Children aside, this rebuke needs to be loudly directed at the profiteers of industrial agriculture. They keep toying with the very nature of food, not to benefit consumers, family farmers, workers, or the environment, but to fatten the profits of Silicon Valley tech giants, food monopolists, and Wall Street financiers. Meet Recombinetics, Inc. It's a high-tech gene manipulation corporation with bioengineers in its labs remaking farm animals. Pigs, for example. Recombinetics wants to mess with the very DNA of Mother Nature's oinkers to make them produce bigger litters to supply the pork factories of brand-name marketers. It's also genetically altering milk cows to withstand hotter weather, so climate change won't reduce the output of huge dairy corporations. Of course, this corporate government collusion to build Franken animals faces a high hurdle in the marketplace, for consumers have shown again and again that they don't want the food they put on their family tables tampered with. The tamperers, however, have a solution to that problem: secrecy. The industry is lobbying to outlaw any requirement that milk and meat produced by genetically altered animals be labeled as such. Better to keep consumers in the dark because, well, if given a free choice, people might reject Recombinetics in favor of natural food. This is Jim Hightower saying, the industrializers are not out to make food better or more affordable for us, but strictly to make it more profitable for them. Rather than remaking animals and the marketplace to benefit corporations that play with our food, let's remake the corporate system so that it cooperates with nature and serves the common good.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
Will violence play a part in American elections?
I'm Tom Hartman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
In Georgia, there have been numerous threats made against election officials and their families, officials who have attested to the accuracy of the presidential election results, including the chief election officer, Gabriel Sterling, and Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State, who we note are Republicans and supporters of Trump in the election. In response to the threats, Sterling said that the president needed to step up and say, "Stop inspiring people to commit potential acts of violence. Someone is going to get hurt. Someone is going to get shot. Someone is going to get killed. It is not right." A Trump campaign spokesman in response said, "No one should engage in threats or violence, and if that has happened, we condemn that fully." Mr. Sterling said that for him, the straw that broke the camel's back was a threat against a 20-year-old contractor for a voting systems company who had been targeted by someone who hung a noose and declared that the worker should be hung for treason. "I can't begin to explain the level of anger I have right now over this," said Sterling. "And every American, every Georgian, Republican and Democrat alike should have that same level of anger." He continued, "Elections are the backbone of democracy, and all of you who have not said a damn word are complicit in this.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because democracy and advocacy begin with you, and freedom can't defend itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1995. That was the day machinists at Boeing ended their 69-day strike. 33,000 workers won increased pay and health benefits. They also won job protections against subcontracting. Contractual clauses against subcontracting were important, especially given the fact that NAFTA had just been passed 2 years earlier. The contract specified that the union be given 3 months' notice regarding any plans to subcontract out work. It also incentivized keeping work in-house by calling for increased benefits to laid-off workers and mandatory retraining and re-employment of workers displaced by subcontracting. These provisions came after IAM members rejected 2 previous contract offers. They were furious at the initial demands for concessions, even as Boeing executives were awarded multi-million-dollar stock options. At the time, the IAM and its members lauded this as a total victory. For a few years, Boeing abided by the contract they signed. Subsequently, Boeing bosses have routinely violated their agreements. Many of these provisions were lost in the 2002 contract and then recaptured in 2008. But the next contract negotiations witnessed a renewed fight for job security. Over the past 2 decades, Boeing workers have seen massive layoffs, subcontracting, pension freezes and phase-outs, and relocation of their work. All while the company rakes in billions of dollars in profits, gets lucrative tax breaks and subsidies, and has close to 5,000 back orders for planes. Subcontracting clauses are important, but can only work when they are enforced. Victories like the winning strike in 1995 can serve as a reminder for workers today that if they stand together in solidarity, they can win better wages, hours, and conditions at the bargaining table.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. We always begin, weather from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 40 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting it to be a tad cooler than yesterday, maybe only a high of 44, maybe only a high of 42. It's somewhere around there, indeed. We had quite a bit of rain over the weekend and a small chance today, cloudy early with peaks of sunshine expected late, and winds will be light and variable. Looks like possibility of rain will be picking up throughout the day and overnight. Partly cloudy early, followed by cloudy skies overnight. Lows around 35. Winds will remain light and variable. And tomorrow, considerable cloudiness with occasional rain showers and a high in the mid-40s. Winds light and variable. Now, confirmed coronavirus cases in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon still stand at 4,017 with 37 deceased. Last weekend, we had numbers a tad over that. And on Tuesday, well, actually late Monday, and for Tuesday's report last, they stood at these numbers I just stated. 4,017 confirmed cases, 37 deceased, and that still remains the number. The weekend totals throughout this whole debacle have been a little late coming, so we'll see what the maybe updated data will provide for us later in the day, and I'm sure we'll have an increase. I don't know why we've been locked down. I have not been able to get an adequate answer from anybody at the state or the county. So maybe it's because we're in a pandemic and no one wants to man the phones. I can understand that. It looks like pollen is rated at none right outside the window here at the mothership. The air quality index for the region is moderate at 55 parts per million, which is not good for those with medical breathing problems. Not to mention a pandemic going around, but anyway, the daytime UV index is low at 1. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.35 inches. Visibility is down to a quarter mile, and relative humidity is at 98%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 51 degrees and mostly cloudy. Paris is 54 and cloudy. Kyiv is 32 degrees and cloudy. Kabul is 31 and partly cloudy. Hong Kong is 54 and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 43 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 67 and merely cloudy. San Francisco, California is 45 degrees and fair. And New York, New York is 39 degrees Fahrenheit with a chilly, almost freezing rain. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Quarter of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The International Criminal Court's prosecutor said that a preliminary probe has found a reasonable basis at this time to believe that crimes against humanity and war crimes have been committed in Ukraine, which merit a full-scale investigation. The 6-year preliminary probe by prosecutors at the global court looked at allegations of crimes, starting with the brutal crackdown on pro-European Union protests in 2013 and 2014, the Russian annexation of the Crimea in 2014, and the drawn-out conflicts in eastern Ukraine. Fighting there between Ukrainian forces and separatist rebels has killed more than 14,000 people in the last 6 years.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Eric Tucker, Frank Bijak, and Matt O'Brien bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. U.S. government agencies were ordered to scour their networks for malware and disconnect potentially compromised servers today after authorities learned that the Treasury and Commerce departments were hacked in a global cyber espionage campaign tied to a foreign government that just happens to be writing and coding in Cyrillic. You know which one. In a rare emergency directive issued late yesterday, Sunday, the DHS cybersecurity arm warned of an unacceptable risk to the executive branch from a feared large-scale penetration of U.S. government agencies that could date back to mid-year or earlier. And Trump fired the cybersecurity team. Yes, starting last March, when the first parts of these hackings began. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we're going to meet up tomorrow for Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.